Emmanuel's eyes, locked onto the trembling figure of his youngest ram beyond the fence, held a sorrow that could crack stone. But in the space of a single heartbeat, grief was tempered by a fierce, focused resolve. He saw the cold, triumphant sneer on Lucien's face, and knew arguments were useless against that kind of calculated evil. He dropped the cleaning tools he held, not in panic, but with quiet decision. He did not rush toward the mango tree where the gap had sealed. Instead, he turned and began to walk quickly, purposefully, along the boundary fence toward the far side of the farm. Lucien, still gripping Lamb, watched the shepherd retreat and chuckled a low, grating sound of contempt. He thought Emmanuel was defeated, too afraid to trespass on his domain. But Emmanuel was heading for the main gate. He reached the heavy wooden structure and drew the latch. He opened the gate slowly, not with the heedless haste of panic, but with quiet, absolute determination. He stepped out onto the hostile, brittle ground, placing himself squarely in the world that had trapped his lamb. Then he firmly closed the gate behind him, securing the rest of the flock within their safety. He was now on the outside, in the same peril as Lamb, but possessing a commanding, unshakable presence. He did not run. He walked with a steady, relentless pace, his shadow long and protective, straight toward the ominous shadows where Lucien and Lamb stood. Lucien, witnessing the shepherd deliberately step onto his turf, felt his triumph falter. The cold calculation in his eyes flared into a sudden, surprised fury. He moved to drag the small ram deeper into the shadows. "He can't save you now." But just then, cutting through the silence of the outer world, came the shepherd's voice. It wasn't loud, but it was clear like a powerful resonating bell. Azel. It was not Lamb. It was the unique, sacred name given to the young ram when he was born, a word only the shepherd and lamb shared, whispered in moments of deep affection. The sound was a perfect mixture of command, love, and absolute authority. At the sound of Azel, the little ram stopped struggling against Lucien and pulled fiercely toward the voice. Emmanuel reached them. He planted himself firmly between the terrified ram and the snarling tempter. "He is mine," Emmanuel said, his voice calm but unwavering. Lucien laughed, a harsh, dry sound. "He crossed the line. He chose my fruit. He is mine now, by the law of this ground." He reached for Azel, but Emmanuel blocked him. "The law of this ground demands a penalty for the broken bond," Emmanuel stated, his gaze meeting Lucien's. "I have come to pay the debt he incurred." Lucien stopped, his eyes gleaming with greedy malice. "Do you? You think you can buy him back with your sweet fruits? It will cost you far more than that, shepherd. It will cost you the innocent standing in the place of the guilty." "Then let the price be settled," Emmanuel said. Before Lucien could react, Emmanuel swiftly stepped forward, placing himself entirely in the line of Lucien's attack, offering his own vulnerability. With a bestial snarl, Lucien seized the opportunity. He did not strike Azel, but instead focused his rage on the shepherd, delivering a savage, cruel blow, the full penalty demanded by the outer world for the broken rule. The pain ripped through Emmanuel, a searing confirmation that the exchange was complete. Emmanuel took the force of the strike without crying out, stumbling but holding his ground, his sacrifice satisfying the demand of the law. Lucien staggered back, his cruel mask replaced by confusion and a sense of having been robbed. This was not the battle he expected. The shepherd's suffering had secured the lamb's release. "Run, Azel," Emmanuel commanded, his voice tight with pain, gesturing toward the main gate behind them. "Go back to safety." Seeing his beloved shepherd suffer and bleed for his mistake, Azel broke free of his frozen terror. He did not look back. He ran, faster than he had ever run before, back toward the main gate, which Emmanuel had intentionally left slightly ajar, a clear path to redemption bought by substitution. The sound of the gate clicking shut was the only witness to the lamb's freedom. Emmanuel stood, breathing hard, the deep, agonizing pain from Lucien's blow radiating through him, but his eyes remained steady, focused entirely on the tempter. Lucien, however, was reeling. His face was twisted, not just with fury, but with a profound, bitter frustration. He had been cheated of his prize, and the power he drew from Lamb's transgression had been neutralized. "You fool," Lucien spat, circling Emmanuel like a frustrated predator. "You bleed for him. You chose suffering over safety. And for what? A moment's victory? He will stray again. He chose me once. He will always be vulnerable to the sweetness outside the fence." Emmanuel placed one hand over the wound on his side, his posture regal despite the pain. "He ran back because he saw the true cost of my love, Lucien, and the false cost of your lies. He tasted your fruit, and he knows now it is bitter. Your offer of freedom is bondage. The debt is not settled." Lucien hissed, his voice rising to a sharp metallic shriek. "You took the blow, but the debt remains. The price for crossing that boundary is ruin. You merely paid for his physical return, not his soul. The scar remains on his memory, and I will use it." Emmanuel straightened, meeting the tempter's rage with quiet, absolute certainty. "The debt is settled," he repeated. "The law of this ground demands a penalty for the broken bond, the innocent for the guilty. I offered myself as the substitution, and you took the price. That is the end of your claim on Azael." He paused, a flicker of profound sorrow passing over his features. "Your claim was only ever on his ignorance, Lucien. Now he has knowledge of the true nature of love and the true nature of deception. Knowledge of the price that was paid for him. That knowledge is a far greater boundary than any fence I could build." Lucien drew back, his form wavering in the shadows, his eyes burning with impotent malice. "You have taught him nothing but fear of me and dependency on you. The longing for what he almost had will never leave him. I will be waiting, shepherd. Every time he looks at the fence, every time he feels a pang of disappointment with your green grass, I will whisper his name." Emmanuel looked past Lucien, his gaze fixing on the closed gate, where his lamb was now safe. He knew the scar of the mistake would remain, a vulnerability and a lesson. "You will whisper," Emmanuel acknowledged, his voice soft but strong. "But he will now hear my voice over yours. You showed him the taste of the outer world. I showed him the cost of his life. That is a lesson no false promise can erase." A sudden, fierce wind whipped up, tearing at the ground where Emmanuel stood, an echo of Lucien's fury. The tempter gave a final desperate howl of rage, then dissolved entirely into the shadows and dust of the outer world. Left alone, bleeding but victorious, Emmanuel stood on the harsh outer ground. The rescue was complete, but the healing had just begun. The first part of his work was over. Now he had to tend to his own wound, and more importantly, to the shattered trust and fear in the heart of his youngest ram. He turned and limped slowly toward the gate, ready to begin the long journey back to the green pastures. Emmanuel walked slowly toward the gate, each step sending a jolt of pain through the wound Lucien had inflicted. The journey back was heavy, weighted not by fear, but by the quiet recognition of the sacrifice. He reached the heavy gate, unlatched it, and slipped back inside the green fields of gardenia. He secured the lock once more, leaning momentarily against the familiar wood, absorbing the profound difference between the harsh outer world and the safe, soft ground beneath his feet. Inside the enclosure, the rest of the flock was calm, though their eyes held a mixture of curiosity and unease. But one ram stood apart. Azael was huddled near the central watering trough, his head hung low. The sweetness of the red fruit, the intoxicating lure of the purple, and the bitter taste of the golden one were all forgotten. All he saw, all he remembered, was the stark image of his beloved shepherd, bleeding and stumbling because of a selfish desire for something outside the boundary. He saw his own shame, magnified tenfold by the knowledge of the price Emmanuel had paid. The fear of punishment was nothing compared to the crushing weight of regret and grief. He heard the latch click and slowly raised his head. He saw Emmanuel, leaning slightly, his hand pressed against his side, where the fabric of his tunic was now dark and wet. Azel let out a small, broken bleat, a sound of sheer, unadulterated remorse, and took a tentative step forward. Then he stopped, unable to move, unable to look the shepherd in the eye. He expected a reprimand, a stern lecture, or perhaps worst of all, the silent condemnation of betrayed love. Emmanuel, seeing the profound, genuine sorrow in the young ram, ignored the throb of his wound. He took a few slow steps, closing the distance, and then gently knelt, wincing only slightly as he did so. He did not ask what had happened. He didn't need to. He didn't focus on the broken rule, but on the broken heart. "Azael," he said, his voice soft, yet firm with the residual authority of the rescue. "Look at me." Lamb raised his eyes, filled with tears. "I am sorry, Emmanuel," he whispered, his voice catching. "I wanted the fun. I wanted the sweetness. I broke your trust, and I caused you pain." Emmanuel reached out, not to stroke him, but to gently place his uninjured hand on the young ram's forehead, in the same spot he had touched the night before. "You made a mistake, my son," Emmanuel confirmed, his gaze steady. "A grave one. You learned that the sweetest lies always carry the bitterest consequences." Then his voice dropped to a warm, gentle murmur, filled with infinite tenderness. "But that is why I went out, Azel. That is why I paid the price. Your mistake is covered. Your debt is paid." He pulled the lamb's head close, foreheads touching once more. "I do not condemn you for the fault. I celebrate your return. There is nothing you have done or will ever do that is too great for my love to cover." Azael felt the shepherd's warmth, the familiar scent of grass and clean straw, and the immense weight of his guilt lifted instantly. He realized that the sacrifice was not a transaction designed to extract obedience, but an absolute gift designed to restore relationship. "Now," Emmanuel continued, gently pushing Azael back just enough to look at him, "you must remember the pain I endured, not to feel shame, but to remember the value of the safety I provide and the true taste of love. The wound remains on my side, Azael, so that the lesson remains in your heart. And your guilt is gone." Emmanuel struggled back to his feet. He had a wound to tend to, a flock to reassure, and a ram to heal. But his first act was simply to watch Azael, who was now trotting, not away in fear, but back into the center of the flock, safe, forgiving, and forever marked by the knowledge of the price of his redemption.